police was 13 in terms of those that have been triaged and then taken to area hospitals. There is, we're told from New South Wales, no wider threat in that they believe they have, in their words, Camilla, neutralized the threat with 2 suspects who had opened fire, taken down, arrested. Reports that one was at the very least seriously injured, may have been killed by shots from the police. And as I said just a little earlier, we're working to bring some new video, which is just incredible, Camilla. It shows a brave member of the public, a man running up to one of the suspected attackers, jumping on him and wresting that pump-action shotgun from the attacker before training it on them, and they then retreat away from the scene. So just incredible bravery for that man to do that, and undoubtedly will have saved more lives.
Mark, as ever, on days like this, we see the very worst of humankind and the very best. As you say, a chap putting himself in harm's way and literally wrestling a gunman to the ground. Mark, we'll come back to you with more a little later. The Labour MP for Darlington, Lola McAvoy, joins me. Oh, no, she's not here yet, sorry. Let's just bring Andrew Pearce into the conversation. Andrew, we were going to do the paper review as normal. We were sitting, planning what we were going to discuss, and yet another tragedy unfolds.
Terrible, and we all know Bondi Beach. I was just checking, 165,000 Brits go to Bondi Beach every year. So, and there'll probably be about 16 to 20,000 Brits are visiting Bondi Beach in December.
Yes.
It's summer in wet there. Yeah. We've got lots of family there, so we know this beach.
I had Christmas 2000 in Bondi Beach and then saw in the new millennia with in Sydney. Yeah. And also just the notion of seeing this footage, Andrew, I mean, this is the kind of terrible thing but good thing in terms of transparency of people recording things on video. Some of the imagery, we have to warn the viewers, and even those listening, because some of the scenes we're going to be describing are just horrendous. Yeah. And you see this footage, we're blurring it out, and you think, it's nearly Christmas. You've got families racing to protect their children. We've got now 10 confirmed dead. We will obviously keep a careful watch on that number and equally those who have been injured. And you just think, for what? Yeah. Wreaking absolute murderous havoc on people as they are trying to join together. Yeah. Jews are trying to celebrate Hanukkah.
One of their most important festivals. I was very struck by your earlier guest reminding us that the terrible attack at the synagogue in Manchester took place on Yom Kippur, another very significant date in the Jewish calendar, as it is. These aren't random lunatics here. These are carefully planned anti-Semite Jew haters who are planning these terrible terror attacks. And I must say, by the way, I think it's most unfortunate that tweet has gone out from Dan.
Can we discuss this tweet then? Because Jonathan Sasrodoti there is very critical of the Prime Minister in general, two-tier care, the government's attitude towards the pro-Palestinian protests, what the Jewish community say is a lack of concern about their needs. We know that the Community Security Trust and other security organisations are now having to protect not just synagogues in this country, but schools. They can't have glass in the windows. They've got to have plastic reinforced glazing and all the rest of it. You know, even situations. I often drive past the JW3 Jewish Community Centre on the Finchley Road. It's always got bodyguards outside. It's become a necessity now. But let's just look at what the Prime Minister has tweeted. I think it must have been a scheduled tweet that just was planned to go out. It went out at 8:59. As Jewish communities come together to celebrate Hanukkah, I send my warmest wishes to families across the UK and around the world. May the Festival of Lights bring hope, peace and comfort. Now, that's a nice sentiment. And as I pointed out to Jonathan, his wife is Jewish. He's spoken about bringing his children up in the Jewish faith and having Friday night dinners. But at the same time, what has gone wrong with the comms organisation here? Because we are now nearly an hour on and there hasn't been an update from the Prime Minister.
It is another sign that within the number 10 bunker it is completely dysfunctional because, as your guest pointed out earlier, we've been waking up to this news, terrible news from Bondi Beach, for some hours now. So for that to have gone out, crass, ignorant, stupid, insensitive. I'm not blaming the Prime Minister,
of course not,
because he's got a large team that should be organising this for him. But where is the response now?
I mean, also members of the Jewish community just saying, your timing,
outraged.
What is the timing of this? Why on earth have you timed this like this?
Members of the Jewish community who tell me they are too frightened to set foot in central London on a Saturday afternoon because of the hateful, often hateful, pro-Palestinian marches where regularly anti-Semitic chants are ignored by our police.
Yes.
Two-tier policing.
Just to update you, if you're only just tuning in to GB News this morning, some very, very tragic breaking news, an unfolding story occurring on Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. We now have confirmation that at least 10 people have been killed and at least 13 injured in a mass shooting. The police say there have been multiple fatalities. It's being reported by local media that at least 10 have been killed. We're still waiting for confirmation of that on the international news wires. The police say that 2 suspected gunmen have been neutralised. Speaking earlier to Mark White, the Home Security editor, who is saying there are unconfirmed reports that one of the gunmen has been shot, possibly even killed. The other gunman believed to have been taken into police custody. There is some extraordinary footage emerging on social media and on news websites of the extraordinary bravery, frankly, of a person down on the beach, a man on the beach who has wrestled one of these gunmen to the ground. We know that more than 50 gunshots were heard. We believe that the gunmen were using pump-action shotguns. So this one hero who has seemingly saved countless lives by wrestling one of these attackers to the ground is just extraordinary. As you can imagine, it's not the normal show that I would be presenting this morning because of this breaking news situation in Bondi Beach. Let's bring Labour MP for Darlington, Lola McAvoy, into the conversation now. Ms McAvoy, obviously we're not going to be speaking about the things we thought we were going to be speaking about. We know there is an announcement from the Home Secretary about cracking down on violence against women and girls. Of course, that's important. But for now, I think we should just focus on this tragedy unfolding in Australia. What's your reaction to what you've seen, some of this, quite frankly, gruesome footage that has been emerging online and indeed on our news channel this morning?
Oh, it's absolutely heartbreaking for everybody who is in Australia, but also around the world. I think when these things happen as they unfold, you can feel the anxiety rise. Certainly, anybody would have a very awful, heartbreaking sympathy for those people. But it's also important that we try and keep a level head until the facts are rolled out. I mean, obviously, as you said, I am on the programme to talk about violence against women and girls, but this incident is utterly devastating for the communities, and to see the news that 10 people have lost their lives is just terrible. And my heart breaks for the families and for everybody across the country who will have friends and family in Australia who will be worried about that now.
Naturally, the Jewish community in the UK are going to be very concerned about their own Hanukkah celebrations. We just spoke to Jonathan Sasradotti, who was talking about there being those candle-lit vigils tonight. Do we think that the Jewish community of the UK has got enough protection?
I think the Jewish community obviously will be very anxious, and it is a key celebration in their calendar. So I just want to say to everybody who's watching, who's a member of that community or knows anyone, that, you know, this is absolutely awful, and we wholeheartedly, completely condemn it and want you to be safe in every part of your life. I think the recent attacks that we saw and the increase of support from government to make sure that Jewish people and people of any faith or none are safe in their community to practice and worship however they wish. That is something that we all hold dear as a government, but also as British people. That is something that we really absolutely must stand by. And I know that we've given extra support to places of worship to make sure that they do have that safety. But it's a sorry state of affairs that it's come to that, isn't it?
The Prime Minister, you may have seen, has been criticised quite widely for posting a sort of generic celebration of Hanukkah at 8:59 today, basically saying, "May the Festival of Lights bring hope, peace and comfort." We don't quite know whether that was a scheduled tweet, perhaps by his communications team or not, but people are pointing out that we're now an hour long the tweet hasn't been updated to reflect what has happened in Bondi Beach this morning. This is a little bit of a communications error, isn't it, from the Prime Minister?
Sure that we will see a statement from the Prime Minister and other senior members of the Cabinet very shortly, because I know that this is something he cares deeply about. As we saw recently, he's spoken about his absolute determination to make sure that members of anybody who is of faith, but also his closeness to the Jewish community. So I'm sure he'll be as shocked and horrified to see these awful images coming out of Australia, and I have no doubt that there will be a formal statement soon.
The Jewish community were previously extremely critical of Jeremy Corbyn when he was running the Labour Party for 4 years. Keir Starmer did serve under him as shadow Brexit secretary. He did clean up the party when it came to anti-Semitism within its midst. We know, of course, that a number of Labour MPs were forced out of their roles. There's still criticism, though, isn't there, Ms McAvoy, about the failure of this government to grip anti-Jewish sentiment in this country, the allowing of those pro-Palestinian marches to continue every Saturday. Jews, prominent members of the Jewish community, reported feeling intimidated by those marches. Nothing seemed to be done to stop them, even when they were marching through Jewish areas on Jewish holy days.
There have been some recent can't march around the same routes. The fact remains that anti-Semitism in this country is a disgusting and vile thing, but it's also increasing, and we must make sure that we have calm and clear lines to say that we stand with the Jewish community and their right to practice their faith, but also their right to be active and full members of our British society. And because British Jews are absolutely valued, as are all members of our communities up and down the country, I think it's really important that the role that online hate plays in these things as well, because I was reading recently about how much sort of news that goes out that is unverified has been recently on channels that are not even produced by people in the UK, and their channels of just misinformation, lots of conspiracy theories. And I think it's really important that in times of like this, of increased pressure and horror and anxiety, where people can hear the worst things happening coming out of Australia, that we absolutely take peace and look out for each other, regardless of your faith, but especially if you know somebody of a community that's affected, or if you've got Jewish friends or family or neighbours, please do reach out to them and just stand with the Jewish community at this very difficult time.
Although, has it not been problematic to have some MPs on the left, and indeed left-wing campaigners and activists, normalise the language around apparently the Israel state committing genocide against those in Gaza? We've had the normalisation of chants like "From the River to the Sea" on the streets of the UK. That, unfortunately, does build up a huge amount of resentment and negative sentiment towards the Jewish community. We did see that played out, unfortunately, at the Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester on Yom Kippur. We're now seeing that seemingly being borne out on Bondi Beach. The language that has been allowed in the aftermath of October the 7th may well have contributed to this.
So I obviously don't want to speculate on what the factors are that have contributed to this awful tragedy that seems to be of a huge scale. You know, the fact that we know that 10 people have lost their lives today is utterly horrendous, and you know, my heart breaks for those people and their families and for the communities affected across the world. I think it's important to note that the escalation of this narrative of who we're against and how much we want to divide each other and how much we want to attack each other, that is really at the core of a lot of the problems that we have in the country at the moment. And I firmly believe that people are good, and that given the opportunity, they will look out for each other. And I just want to say that as much as possible, we should try and detoxify the way that we think of people who aren't like us, because our diversity in this country is our strength. And I firmly am on the side of working together and celebrating our difference, because, you know, I was a community organiser a long time ago, and the strongest campaigns that we ever worked on were about bringing people of different faiths and different worldviews and different backgrounds together to find what we had in common. And at times like this, it makes me think of, you know, what happened with Jo Cox and her speech and that mantra that she had about more in common. We have more in common than that divides us. And that is the most true statement we can think of at very difficult, testing and anxiety-inducing times. And, you know, I wish the best for everybody watching who is feeling anxious, and I hope we do get some formal news soon.
Lola McAvoy, thank you very much indeed, the Labour MP for Darlington, for joining me this morning. Let's cross now to GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, details of this atrocity still unfolding. What's the latest?
Well, GB News can now confirm that 10 people have been killed as a result of this shooting attack. This confirmation coming now from New South Wales Police. We should say that 9 of those who have been killed were innocent members of the public. The 10th is suspect. You're seeing images there that we mentioned to you a while ago. That in the white t-shirt is a brave member of the public who ran up to one of the alleged attackers and wrestled the pump-action shotgun that they were firing from their hand, and then clearly managed to neutralise that particular threat. We, as I say, we're confirming that one of the suspects has been shot and killed. We don't know if that suspect was shot by this member of the public or whether that came later in terms of the police response, but there are images of a suspect on the ground receiving CPR. But regardless, I mean, the actions of that member of the public running between 2 parked cars to jump onto someone who clearly had a deadly weapon and was firing that deadly weapon, then to wrestle that shotgun from that suspected attacker is just incredible.
Just absolutely extraordinary. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it, Mark. And also there, it seems as if he had neutralised that gunman. And then, to be fair, once again, the emergency services in Sydney rushing towards danger seem to have been on the scene very quickly, Mark.
Yes, because it was such a busy event anyway, with the Hanukkah celebrations and clearly the enhanced threat and security around that there tends to be at Jewish events, understandably, because the Jewish community, we've seen right around the world, have been targeted, and increasingly so in light of the war that's been raging in Gaza. So there will have been police in the area. I'm sure that won't stop of course, the criticism that will follow about whether there was enough in the way of security, whether all of the intelligence had been acted on about possible threats. Now, of course, that we have the 2 suspects, in the words of the police, neutralised. They'll know who they are if they were on a watch list. And as is so often the case, you'll find that people are known to the authorities because these things just don't happen in isolation. People are often on a journey of increasing extremist behaviour before they get to the point that they enact that in a murderous way like this.
Yes. Mark, thank you very much indeed. We'll come back to you for more updates during the show. Just to warn you that this morning, if you're just waking up to this atrocity in Australia on Bondi Beach in Sydney, you are going to be seeing some distressing images. We do warn you, we are going to blur out the worst aspects, but this has been a mass shooting with mass fatalities. At least 10 people confirmed dead, another 13 injured, according to Australian authorities. Let's speak to Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp now. Mr. Philp, I was planning to ask you a lot of different questions. I'm abandoning them because I don't think it would be appropriate. Can we just have your reaction to these horrific scenes that have been unfolding in Australia this morning?
Well, it appears to be a horrendous terrorist attack targeting innocent members of the public, and our thoughts obviously are first and foremost going to be with the victims and their families at what is obviously a devastating time. This is made even more appalling by the fact it appears a Hanukkah party, a Jewish New Year party, was being potentially targeted. And if it turns out that that was the motivation, and I realise we're not certain yet, but if that is the motivation, it makes this terrorist attack all the more appalling.
You're right, Mr. Philp. It's difficult for us to confirm anything at this stage as to the motivations behind the gunmen who are believed to have fired more than 50 times on that crowd gathered on the beach. I mean, you could say that it was quite audacious to have done such a thing when the area was swarming with the emergency services, because they made no secret of the fact that the Hanukkah celebration was taking place there. Clearly, Mr. Philp, this is going to spark yet more concerns among the UK's Jews, that they simply aren't safe, that they're not safe in their schools, they're not safe in their places of worship, they're not safe if they want to gather in communities and celebrate events like Hanukkah. Are they safe?
Well, I think members of the Jewish community up and down the UK do have very grave concerns about their safety, and I understand why. We saw just a few weeks ago at the synagogue in Manchester in Heaton Park an Islamist extremist targeting, attacking and murdering members of Britain's Jewish community simply because they're Jewish, and he was perpetrating an Islamist terrorist atrocity. So I understand that members of the Jewish community here will feel unsafe. I think it's our responsibility, or the government's responsibility, to redouble efforts to protect the Jewish community and to fight anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism, it starts with anti-Semitism and then it escalates into acts of terrorist violence like we saw in Manchester a few weeks ago, and potentially, I do say potentially, like we may be seeing in Australia now, and where there is violence against the Jewish community. People who go around chanting things like "globalise the Intifada" and using slogans like that need to, I think again and stop using that kind of language when we see anti-Semitism being rampant and we see terrorist attacks against the Jewish community, including, as I say, here in the UK just a few weeks ago.
Do we need to perhaps rethink the legislation around such language, Chris Philp? Because I listened to an interview that Sir Mark Rowley, the Commissioner of the Met Police, gave in the week, I think, to Nick Ferrari on LBC, and he was saying that there was legal confusion around, for instance, the term "from the river to the sea," that it could be argued by lawyers that it didn't mean quite what it did. We've also had arguments around, Allah Akbar and other statements being chanted at marches, and whether they are a kind of mark of insurrection or whether they are a celebration in some way. Do we need to actually ban certain words and phrases from the lexicon when it comes to some of these marches, if the consequence, the unfortunate consequence, may be that it raises the threat of violence against the Jewish community?
Well, I think language that incites racial hatred, well, that's illegal already, and those laws should be policed a lot more robustly, first of all. I think, secondly, any language which incites violence should be expressly prohibited, and things like calling for jihad or calling for intifada, those are, in my view, directly calling for acts of violence. And if the law needs to be tightened to make that clear, then the government should look at doing that. Anything which calls for violence is, in my view, frankly, not acceptable. And both jihad and intifada are essentially violent acts, and nobody should be calling for violence in public in a country like the UK. I would also say that where someone here in the UK who is a foreign citizen, so not a UK citizen, but a citizen of somewhere else, here on a visa or something, if they use language which supports terrorism, which supports extremism, or which incites hatred in any way, including anti-Semitism, then those people should have their visas revoked and they should be kicked out of the country, kicked out of the UK, because there is no place in the UK for extremism, for anti-Semitism, or for expressing support for terrorism or hatred.
Just finally, Mr. Philp, there's been a little bit of a controversy around something that Keir Starmer tweeted earlier today. So around an hour ago, it looks as if a scheduled post went out on X marking Hanukkah, showing solidarity with the Jewish community. May the Festival of Lights bring hope, peace and comfort. Clearly that went out as this tragedy was unfolding over on Bondi Beach. It's taken him at least an hour to then update his X feed with a message that I will read now. Deeply distressing news from Australia. The United Kingdom sends our thoughts and condolences to everyone affected by the appalling attack in Bondi Beach. I'm being kept updated on the developing situation. Now, a lot of commentators in the 45 minutes to an hour between those two tweets saying he was too late to respond to this atrocity. Actually, on a day like this, where we've got multiple fatalities, actually the nuances of the number 10 communications quiz system probably isn't the most important concern. But is the criticism of the Prime Minister's handling of this justified, Mr. Philp?
Well, I did notice him tweeting referencing Hanukkah without referencing the Bondi Beach attack, and I did find that a little bit surprising. But he has clearly reacted subsequently. I think it would have been better if he'd acknowledged it at the very beginning. But as you say, I think there are more important things to worry about today, like the victims of this appalling terrorist attack, getting to the bottom of the motivation. And if the motivation was anti-Semitic, as appears certainly possible, that is something we need to be talking about and working out how to fight globally and in particular here in the UK.
OK, Chris Philp, we'll leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. You're still seeing footage live from Bondi Beach, where it is currently 9:15 p.m. In the evening as the emergency services deal with an atrocity that has cost at least 10 lives and injured 13 people. The leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has reacted to the attack, posting on X heartbreaking scenes emerging from Bondi Beach of what looks like another despicable terrorist atrocity. As Jews across the UK gather to welcome Hanukkah, we must once again remind ourselves of the enduring power of the story of the Maccabees, not only to Jewish history, but to universal themes of resilience, courage and hope. We need them more than ever in the battle of light over darkness. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has reacted to the tragic events in Australia. He's posted on X the following: the Hanukkah party shooting in Australia is horrendous. The threat is everywhere. I think we're ready now to speak to the former chief of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove. Sir Richard, I was going to be speaking to you about other matters, Trump, an ambush by ISIS in Syria, Chinese threats, Russia threats. But actually, we're looking at a very, very horrific incident that has unfolded in Bondi this morning. What can you say? What's your reaction to what has happened?
Well, I think all I can do is express severe shock. I mean, these sort of shooting incidents in Australia are pretty rare.
Yes.
And I mean, OK, maybe I'm jumping to conclusions, but it looks like a really ghastly terrorist attack on a Jewish gathering. And it's so upsetting, really, because of the way that the Jewish community, not just in Australia, but elsewhere, has been, intimidated, attacked. I mean, this is just gruesome. I mean, it's terrible.
It's very gruesome. The footage is horrendous. This is happening just days before Christmas. You've got Jewish families, but also other families there on the beach trying to enjoy a lovely evening of sea and sand. And then this unfolds. So, Richard, take us inside the investigation that will be being carried out right now by police and I would assume intelligence services in Australia. We've had news of the two gunmen being, quotes, neutralized. We're still trying to confirm what that means. We think one of the gunmen may have been shot. We don't know whether fatally, and the other gunman in custody. What will now be happening behind the scenes to piece together the run-up to this appalling attack?
Well, the Australian Security Service, ASIO, is very efficient. I mean, going way back, I had a lot to do with them in terms of really warning Australia that they were not going to be isolated from terrorism, despite the distance globally, from the seat of problems in the Middle East, maybe. And they have built a formidable capability and been very successful in handling terrorist problems inside Australia. You only have to go back to some of the big public events there, and they haven't had many incidents of this nature at all. But I think now they'll be looking through the list of people who they think have been radicalized in their Arab community. And bear in mind, there's a very big Middle Eastern community in those parts, in that southern part of Australia.
Yes.
And looking to see, what track record these individuals have. I mean, my understanding is one's being killed in the police response, and another, circumstantially, they're saying was overpowered by a member of the public, which is pretty extraordinary if that's happened.
We've seen footage of that, Sir Richard. It's quite remarkable. A man jumps on the gunman, wrestles the gun from his hands, and then points it at him as the gunman is then sort of held at gunpoint for the police to arrive. So it's a remarkable act of bravery from that particular individual.
It's incredible, absolutely incredible.
So Richard, when something like this happens, obviously we wait for the security services to say whether or not it's terrorism. How is that judgment reached?
Well, I mean, I think in this incident, in terms of what we know about it, it's not a very difficult judgment to reach.
No.
I mean, if the shooters have no, if the shooters have no relationship with the individuals that they're killing, obviously there's some sort of ideological or political motivation. Particularly, when it's a mass public event like this. I mean, I don't think this is a complicated or difficult issue. Okay, everybody's tiptoeing along, not wanting to say something that they subsequently regret. Maybe I'm a little more outspoken, but I mean, to me, this is clearly a terrorist assault. The question really will be in the minds of the Australian investigators. Are these two lone wolves? Are there other people involved? Is it a conspiracy? Are there other events being planned? I mean, you're going to look at it in that sort of context. I mean, my guess is that this is a couple of wild cards who might claim an association with an organization. Well, they might say they're Hamas, or they might say they're ISIS, they might say they're Al-Qaeda. But probably it hasn't been planned as a conspiracy by a group of people. It's probably, almost the self-standing group, or that's my guess. I mean, obviously I don't, but that's what it looks like at the moment.
But it does look as if the complexion of such terror attacks, if we can call it that, and I appreciate the caveats that we're both applying here because we haven't had any confirmation from the Australian authorities either way. But I agree with you, Sir Richard, that that's what it looks like. If you are going to open fire on a Hanukkah celebration, then of course it looks as if it is motivated by a hatred of Jews. The complexion of some of these attacks appears to have changed. In the past, we've been used to jihadists and others, using detonating bombs in certain areas. And we remember 7/7, we remember 9/11 and all of the rest of it. And a group takes credit. What seems to have happened in the aftermath of October the 7th is that you get these sort of fixated individuals who aren't, as you say, necessarily affiliated with anyone, taking it upon themselves to mete out some kind of rough justice. I mean, is that the threat really, and how it's changed in its complexion, this idea of individuals becoming radicalised and not necessarily representing any given group?
Well, I think that's a valid observation. I mean, it's difficult to make it as a interpretation of this event. But I think the one thing I would say is that if you are the security authorities, a random group of shooters in an urban situation is a very, very difficult problem to control. And I think that what's happened to an extent is, okay, gunmen like this have seen more organized shooting events. What I mean by that is conspiracies. There have been several in India, you may recall. And once you're running loose in an urban area with a powerful firearm, this is a nightmare for the security authorities, for the police to respond. And I mean, looking at this, it looks to me as though the Australian police reacted pretty damn quickly.
Yes. Well,
despite the fatalities.
There's something audacious about the attack itself, Sir Richard, because the police knew about the Hanukkah celebration. It was advertised so that as many people of the Jewish community could come along to Bondi Beach and join it. And therefore, it looks as if there were police and emergency services there because it was a large gathering of people. And yet still we've had 2 gunmen apparently firing more than 50 bullets into the crowd. Just with your former MI6 chief hat on, Sir Richard, again, this is somewhat changed in its complexion. I would imagine the security services used to be worried about people gathering together the ingredients for explosives. Now they're worried about assailants amassing very, very dangerous weapons. In this case, we understand that they were using pump-action shotguns. We've obviously seen knife attacks, not least outside Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester. So this is the other concern for the intelligence services, isn't it? How people are getting hold of these weapons.
Well, I mean, that's getting hold of the weapons first. I mean, I think Australia has pretty strict gun laws. They aren't as strict as in the UK. And as I say, once someone's running loose in an urban environment, this is the risk of what's going to happen. I mean, I don't know whether you recall, but I did have some discussions way back. Do you remember that shooting event in Norway?
Yes.
Which was, that children's summer camp, which was absolutely horrendous. And the problem with that was the slowness of the Norwegian police to respond. And, there was a parallel bomb explosion to distract them. And I think, okay, that was an individual, that was not a sort of ideological terrorist event. But, I mean, it just shows you the huge difficulty, even when you've got very efficient security and good intelligence coverage, let's say, of the extent to which radicalization is a problem. You can't... Getting 100% result in terms of making people safe is, I'm sorry to say, almost impossible.
Yes, I know. And actually, to be fair, we know when the intelligence services are doing a good job when they've foiled plots that we haven't got to hear about. So, Richard Dearlove, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Camilla. Okay, all the very best. I'm really sorry about these circumstances it's caused.
It's just horrific. It's horrific to be reporting on it this close to Christmas. At any time, it would be horrific. But the timing of this, as Jews gather to mark Hanukkah, is truly, truly appalling. Just to update you, if you're only just joining us at GB News, 10 people have been killed following a mass shooting in Bondi Beach in Sydney. Police say that 2 suspected gunmen have been neutralised. There is footage of a man wrestling a pump-action shotgun from one of the gunmen. The Israeli president has said that the attack happened during Hanukkah celebrations. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has called the scene shocking and distressing. Sir Keir Starmer has said it is deeply distressing news and described it as an appalling attack. We are waiting now for a press conference in Bondi Beach. But before we try to cross to that, GB News' home and security editor, Mark White, has been across the breaking news details of this. Mark, what's the latest?
Well, that news conference that you were alluding to there, Camilla, will take place, we hope, in the next few minutes. It's going to be attended by the Premier of New South Wales, Chris Minns, and also the Commissioner of New South Wales Police, Mal Lanyon, who will give the very latest. What New South Wales Police have said, though, in a statement just released, is the confirmation of 9 innocent people who have been killed, 1 suspected attacker who has been killed, and they also say that the second suspected attacker is in a critical condition. They believe that the casualty numbers are likely to change. I've got that statement now. It's worth reading it out as there's a bit of detail in here, Camilla. So they say 10 people have been confirmed dead, including a man believed to be one of the shooters. The second alleged shooter is in a critical condition. At this time, a further 11 people are reported to be injured, 2 of which are police officers. Emergency services, they say, were called to Campbell Parade at about 6:45 p.m. on Sunday, responding to reports of shots fired. Officers attached to Eastern Suburbs Police Area Command attended and were assisted by multiple resources from across the city, as we're seeing very clearly on the aerial images there of the huge emergency service response. They go on to say a number of suspicious items located in the vicinity are being examined by specialist officers, and an exclusion zone is in place. Now, this is new information and to me suggests potential concern about IEDs, improvised explosive devices. We often see in attacks like this, and remember, of course, just recently the attack on the synagogue in Manchester, where the attacker on that occasion, who was then shot dead by police, had strapped what looked like a suicide vest to his body. That's all about creating more fear and confusion and delaying the response of the emergency services. So it may be in the fullness of time that if these are IEDs, that they are fake as well. But out of an abundance of caution, of course, the police have got to seal off the area. They've got to make it safe and ensure that they deal with whatever the potential threat is. And the statement just concludes by saying that it is a multi-agency response continuing. An extensive crime scene has been established and inquiries are underway. There have been no reports of any other incidents in Sydney connected to this. That's important, I think, to get across, Camilla, because there have been, as is often the case on social media, reports of other incidents targeting the Jewish community elsewhere in Sydney. Police categorically denying that that is the case. This is contained within this area around Bondi Beach. There are no other reported incidents that they are responding to.
Yes, I noticed that the authorities were keen to stress that rumours shouldn't be shared on social media that would then spark mass panic, Mark. I'm just reading on the Telegraph website, they've spoken to an eyewitness called Mark Ortis, who is 30. He lives in Belmore, which is nearby. He says he was sitting on the grass by the beach at the time when he heard around 10 gunshots ring out. He took his camera and filmed crowds of people running out of the sea and up towards him while the shots continued. He told the Telegraph, quotes, "It happened so fast. We heard gunshots. Immediately everyone was running away. I couldn't see directly where it was all happening. It was terrible. I can't describe the feeling. I was seeing everyone running away, the children crying, many people screaming. Afterwards, he said he stayed for a while everything suddenly went quieter." And I tell you that's also one of the most upsetting aspects of seeing this footage, Mark. If the footage itself of the immediate aftermath of this attack wasn't gruesome enough, there is then the eerie silence that descends on the beach as it is shut down by police. We can still see the operation there, Mark, on Bondi Beach. We're waiting for this press conference. We will cross live to that as soon as it happens, reporters gathering there to hear from the Australian authorities. But it's the contrast of those scenes, isn't it, Mark, of seeing it full of life, the beach full of life, with people celebrating Hanukkah, probably just celebrating the sand and the sea and the sunshine in that very iconic area of Sydney, contrasted with the scenes now, drones overhead, emergency services everywhere, and confirmation, as you say, of 10 dead, including one of the shooters.
Yeah, because now, of course, we get into the protracted element of the response here, which is to gather all of the forensics. You can see the forensic services on scene now as they, in slow time, try to piece together exactly what happened. Now, interestingly, with that eyewitness, Mark, being interviewed by your colleagues at the Telegraph there, we have his images. We were showing them a little earlier. I don't know if we've still got them to hand, but they show the people running from that beach as the shots rang out, filmed by Mark just in the seconds after he first heard those shots running out. And you could see hundreds and hundreds of people on the beach just scattering, running up the beach, trying to get away from the potential danger, not really knowing exactly where the shots were coming from and just desperate to get out of the area. And it is that horrific, horrible panic, and as you say, contrasted by the terrible silence and shock that descends on an area as people really try to digest the full scope of the horror that they're seeing there. But live images now looking down at the scene on Bondi Beach. I noticed from the helicopter shots, Camilla, that we were showing a second or so ago as well, those now recorded helicopter shots, that was looking down on a little bridge area that is just a little bit further up from the beach. It seems that the gunman opened fire further down towards the crowd, retreated up to that little bridge area, and it was there that they were confronted by the police and shot. One of those gunmen killed, now confirmed by New South Wales Police, the other in a critical condition.
I mean, there is something reflecting on it now, Mark, because obviously we've been covering this from journalistic purposes, but I always look at these events and think, well, there for the grace of God go I. I mean, what parent hasn't taken their kids to a beach or to some kind of celebration ahead of Christmas? There is something uniquely evil about opening fire on people who are almost uniquely defenceless if they're on a beach. You know, having a picnic in their swimmers, no protection at all, such an open, expansive space as well, Mark. And I was speaking to Sir Richard Dearlove earlier and talking about the changing complexion of some of these attacks. Because in the past we had witnessed atrocities carried out by groups or people on behalf of groups, and groups taking credit, be it Al-Qaeda or ISIS or others. And then we're seeing, and again, we don't have confirmation, the motivations behind this attack will be made clear once the Australian authorities carry out their full investigations. But this idea of lone or pairs of fixated individuals motivated by hatred towards others, really scary. And also, of course, Mark, their access to pump-action shotguns in Australia, which has extremely strict gun laws.
Yeah, you're right. After the 1995 horrific shootings in Tasmania, in which 35 people died, they brought in, the Australian authorities, some of the toughest gun laws of any country in the world. But clearly determined individuals can get hold of deadly weapons. We see deadly weapons used by the criminal fraternity all of the time. And there is a crossover, sadly, between criminality and terrorism, where terrorists can get their hands on weapons if they are willing to pay enough money. And you said there, of course, that we've no official confirmation of the motivation here. But listen, it's clear, I think, to us who observe these things regularly, that this has all the hallmarks of a terrorist incident. And I say this because of the fact that we're looking at two shooters here. Quite often what happens is you get a mass casualty event with one person, then further down the line the authorities will say, well, you know, the motivation, we can't really be clear about, there's mental health issues at play. But that mental health issue element goes out of the window when it's two individuals here. There's the Hanukkah event that seems to have been specifically targeted here, and I've no doubt in my mind that in the hours ahead there will be confirmation that that was a specific target of these attackers. And you're right to say, Camilla, that it's just absolutely blood-curdling that these sort of mass gatherings of people enjoying themselves at festivities, and especially at this time of the year, there's a heightened terror threat, and that's because terrorists want to make a statement, and they know that key times of the year like this, when people are gathered for events, celebratory events, solemn events, they can get lots of people together. They know that the symbolism of attacking an event like this is so much more profound in their sick heads. And it, for them, manages to make even more of a splash than it would. But I mean, this would obviously make headlines around the world anyway, as we're seeing the images now from inside the venue there, where we're expecting that news conference from the Premier of New South Wales and from the Police Commissioner. Understandably, they're dealing with this unfolding event, so these things can sometimes slip time-wise. But just to go back to the point you were making about these, people being targeted and when they're enjoying themselves at events like this, there's real concern, I have to say, speaking to the police and security services, as I regularly do, at this time of the year in particular, there's always concern. But now, on the back of what's been playing out in Gaza, the attacks that we've seen around the world targeting the Jewish community, but also the Christian community, we're now into what is a huge Christian festival with many people gathering for events. Christmas markets, we know, have been targeted in the past. We're not being told of any specific threat, but the threat picture and the intelligence is certainly very concerning as far as the police and security services are concerned.
Well, at the end of the day, Mark, as we have heard from some of our Israeli contributors, an attack on the Jewish community of Australia or anywhere is an attack on all of us. And it's the idea of these gunmen opening fire. There are children on the beach. And if the children, God willing, haven't been caught up in this, what have they witnessed? What have they seen when they've been out with their families? It doesn't bear thinking about. We're waiting for this press conference, Mark. Hold tight, because we will, of course, come back to you with reaction to whatever is said. We're waiting for the Premier of New South Wales, Chris Minns, to address reporters in that room there. You can see the footage of in Sydney, along with Mal Lanyon, who is the head of the New South Wales Police, for an update. We're going to cut to that as soon as we can. As soon as they appear, we will get their words to you on GB News. Before then, let's speak to News Corporation journalist Sophie Ellsworth. Sophie, you and I were together last weekend for a lovely Christmas celebration. We were sharing our Anglo-Australian stories, weren't we? I was telling you that my brother lives out in Brisbane. We've got family in Sydney. I've been on Bondi Beach many times. I can't believe that I'm speaking to you under these circumstances.
Oh, Camilla, it's just shocking. I mean, to wake up to this news here in the UK. I mean, Bondi Beach, as you know, Camilla, it's one of the most popular places in Australia. It's known globally. It was a warm day, Sunday. So many people down at Bondi Beach. It's familiar with people from all around the world, but particularly British, many who live in Bondi Beach. And to have this happen around 6:30 p.m. in the evening, when people are just going about their business, the Jewish community are holding a festival and celebrating, is absolutely shocking. And this is one of the darkest days in Australia's history. We don't typically think of significant events in terms of dates, but we will remember this as the Bondi Beach attack, the horror that happened today. And while we don't know a lot of detail about the attackers, listening and reading the footage back home, Camilla, some of the stories are shocking. The latest I just heard, there's reports that a 10-year-old girl is among the injured. We think she is alive, but kids were close to this. There's a children's playground right next to where it happened. It's absolutely horrific.
It's sickening. It's sickening to think of anyone caught up, but to think of children, Sophie. I'm just reading here because I just wanted to look up how many Jews actually live in Australia. So the Jewish population is around 120,000. Most of them live in either Melbourne or Sydney. Obviously, this was a celebration that was well advertised to mark candles to start the beginning of Hanukkah. Has Australia had a problem with anti-Semitism in the aftermath of October the 7th, as we have in the UK?
Absolutely, they have, Camilla. It's been shocking to watch the anti-Semitism rage, fester, and just be allowed to continue on in Australia. Australia is such a wonderful country, but the last few years it's been so polarising and so divisive, with the Australian government not acting swiftly enough when there's been multiple attacks on Jewish communities. We've had synagogues attacked. This is not just out of the blue. This is not something that just came from nowhere. And my colleagues, Camilla, at Sky News Australia, have been calling for swift action on this, as well as my newspaper colleagues, for years. Since the October 7 attack, there has been so many calls to the Anthony Albanese's government to do more to stamp this out. And they've been feeble on it. They've been weak. They haven't been strong enough. They always, pull in issues with the Muslim community. They say there's issues with the Jewish community. They try and wrap them in together. This is absolutely disgraceful, what has happened in our country. It's right before Christmas. So many children there are on Christmas holidays down, celebrating with their families. And for Australia to have this happen is a national day of shame.
I'm thinking as well, obviously this is a targeted attack against the Jewish community because we knew that event was taking place there, the Hanukkah event, but also the iconic nature of Bondi Beach, Sophie. The idea of attacking, I mean, it's almost a symbol for everything that we understand about Australia. Sun, surf, sand, people enjoying a tinny or a picnic on the beach there. So for this now to become a scene of bloodshed, what's the reaction in Australia right now? What are you hearing from friends and relatives? Obviously, this is unfolding as we're going into the evening there. But Australia is going to be so rocked by this just because of the iconic nature of where this atrocity has taken place.
Absolutely, Camilla. It's world famous. It's an absolutely iconic part of Australia's makeup. I mean, it's so famous. It's arguably the most famous beach in Australia. And people go there just to say, we've been to Bondi Beach. I've had friends and family messaging me in the last few hours saying they won't be going there. They don't think it's safe to go there. And now that Bondi has been targeted with this attack, it's going to drive people away. They're going to think, will this happen in front of my own eyes? It's somewhere where people go because they can swim, they can relax with their friends. I had friends in Sydney today saying, we're down at the beach, we're heading down there. And then to wake up and hear that this has happened is just so hard to fathom, Camilla. And we're yet to hear from our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. He has tweeted about this. We're waiting to hear from the New South Wales Premier, Chris Minns. I mean, they will be working throughout the night now because that scene down at Bondi remains a massive crime scene. And there's so much to unfold. There's so many witnesses on the ground. Last I heard, there were 15 potentially injured, 10 dead. I mean, these numbers are changing rapidly, but there was so many hundreds of people down there, just going about their lives on a Sunday evening. The Jewish community should be allowed to celebrate without living in fear. And unfortunately, in Australia, we've let this happen.
Also, Sophie, I mean, people watching and listening to GB News might not know that it becomes a focal point for people to gather, not just at Christmas and even on Christmas Day, but also on New Year's Eve, of course. Huge celebrations usually take place on Bondi Beach. I'm not sure whether that's going to be allowed to happen now after this has happened, but let's see. I'm reading here about Australia having a proposed anti-Semitism plan that was put before the PM, Anthony Albanese, back in the summer. Sophie, do you know what happened to that? This was in the face of criticism that the government wasn't doing enough to fight anti-Semitism. And this wasn't just by social media platforms, but also concerns that more should be done to deport people spreading hate in Australia. We're getting chilling echoes of this in the UK, by the way. It seems to be a problem that's affecting both countries in a similar way. And also a quest, I think, for a bigger crackdown on hate speech in Australia. What's the status of that, Sophie?
Well, Camilla, it hasn't happened. I mean, look, we're talking about this now. It seems to be a lot of words, but not a lot of action. And these events, these situations where the Jewish community is being targeted. We had a Jewish festival that was due to happen in Melbourne that's been cancelled. I highly doubt there'll be, celebrations in the coming weeks in Sydney. I mean, coming up to New Year's, coming up to Christmas, this is just devastated the country. We're known for being such a relaxed and laid back, and great country. And we live in this amazing place with this beautiful Bondi Beach. It's one of the most glorious settings. And for that to just be destroyed, and that Bondi name will now forever be linked with this attack, which they're saying is a terrorist attack. We're yet to hear from Anthony Albanese, but the Israeli government have been very strong in condemning Australia and saying they have not done enough to stand by the Jewish community. And that shows, Camilla, because this is allowed to happen. And people are going to question, once we get more details of who these attackers are, what's their background, where did they come from, why were they motivated to do this, why are the Jewish community repeatedly being targeted? And it's gotten worse since October 7. And we saw what happened down at the Opera House shortly after that, where people were chanting various things against the Jewish community. It was absolutely shocking. But this has been allowed to happen. And Anthony Albanese is going to be, Camilla, under intense scrutiny now, because the country is fed up with this.
I think that sentiment is echoed over in the UK. We're about to see a press conference by Chris Minns, who's the Premier of New South Wales. Sophie, what can you tell us about him? How long has he been in post? What are his political affiliations?
So he's the Labor leader in New South Wales. He's been in government several years. He won a majority government. He's very popular in New South Wales. I was listening to some of the commentary earlier back in Australia. He has been stronger in the stance against anti-Semitism, some may argue, than the Prime Minister. But this has happened and he is the Premier. So now is the time not to just say words, but take action and to make sure whoever these people are that committed these atrocities are dealt with appropriately. And this raging, festering anti-Semitism in Australia is stamped out once and for all, because sadly, Camilla, the fear is this may happen again. And what's been happening here in the UK is very similar to what's happening in Australia. And I'm sure there's many people here in the UK who worry whether something like that will happen here. But for that to happen in such an iconic place, it was it seems a targeted attack. It was at a critical time on a Sunday evening when it's very, very busy. It's school holidays, it's summer, it's hot, people are going about their business. And to have open fire, gunshots blistering at the community is just, it's hard to fathom, Camilla. And you've got ties to Australia. This is not the country I'm familiar with.
No, me neither, Sophie. Look, we need to leave it there. Thank you very, very much for your time this morning. And, of course, our hearts go out to your fellow Australians on a horrific day for Australia, a horrific day for the world, with 10 dead, including one of the gunmen in Bondi Beach. We'll cross now to Australian Senator Pauline Hanson, who joins us. Ms Hanson, thank you very much indeed for your time this evening, your time. What's your reaction to the appalling scenes that have unfolded in one of the most iconic beaches in the world today?
I'm really distressed by this, and I'm saddened by what's happened in Australia, especially, as Sophie did describe Bondi Beach as the most iconic beach that we have in Australia. Highly, visited by many Australians that would go, and especially this time of year. Here we had the first of 8 nights for Hanukkah, and it was tight security there. They had security guards there. People weren't told where they were going to have it until the last minute. They were told this morning where to go, for security reasons. And then you had this happen. Apparently those 2 shooters were spotted half an hour before the shooting. They opened up and started shooting on people, but just not people, but also on children, randomly just shooting. Reports about 50 shots were fired out. And these men were, of colour, men of colour. So that, and I've called for the full report of who these men were, where they come from, what's their background, what their status, and I think we have a right to know this. And I don't want it swept underneath the carpet, which we see so much of the time happen with crimes that are committed in Australia, and they bury it. Who's responsible for this? And it goes back to, and I question all the time, goes back to the migrants we're bringing into the country.
OK, I mean, Pauline Hanson, I appreciate what you're saying. We have seen some images of both gunmen. One of them we think has been killed. The other is in a critical condition. Yes, they do appear to be men of colour. We don't know where they're from. We don't have their names. We don't know as yet their motivations. We also don't know their immigration status. In general, though, I know you've raised concerns about the safety of the Jewish community in Australia in the aftermath of October the 7th.
I have. And I blame the Prime Minister for this, because the warnings were there. They allowed for the Palestinian marches to go on every weekend for the last 2 years. We've had our status of terrorism attack that's gone last year, September last year, up to a probable. So there's been, Islamic clerics or religious clerics on our streets preaching hate. And this has been allowed to go on unchecked by our governments, and I blame also the state governments as well. This should not have been allowed. You've got the way the Jewish students were treated at the universities. They were bullied, they were threatened. It was not reined in, and this was allowed to go on. So I do blame the Prime Minister. I will call it out for the way I see it. I think it's disgusting what's happened. No matter what your religious background is or who you are, and you've come here for a peaceful life in Australia, everyone has a right to live that peaceful life. But if there's been so much anti-Semitism that's happened in the last 2 years, since what happened in Israel with the attack that happened there on October the 7th, and it's just been allowed to go on with this hatred in Australia, and it is hatred, and it's a real shame. I feel for the Jewish community. They're hurt and pain. They have a right to live in peace and harmony in our country. And it's a shame that it's come to this. And my heart goes out to the Jewish community and all Australians, because now Australians will be in fear. Our country has changed so much over the last 2 to 3 decades. And I've seen the changes, and it's concerned me greatly. When I've spoken out about it, I got called that I'm a racist or Islamophobic. And, I don't want to be that way. But I just called it out for the way that I see it, and I hope that we can go back to people feeling safe in the country, but I doubt it.
Yes, you did caught some controversy, Ms Hanson, for wearing a burqa in Parliament, and you were suspended, I think, for a day initially, and then for the rest of the week's sittings. You have been very outspoken when it comes to raising your concerns about mass migration to Australia and, as you say, the treatment of the Jewish community in the aftermath of October the 7th. Is there particular legislation or any legal changes you think should be enforced, perhaps when it comes to hate speech, perhaps when it comes to the policing of these marches?
Look, I don't think the marches should have been allowed to be happening in Australia, especially flying the Palestinian flags. And I know it happened all over the world, but it was divisive, and a lot of people had no idea why they were actually in those marches. If you ask them who Hamas was, they didn't have any clue, any idea with it. I found it was divisive for a lot of Australians to actually have those marches in Australia. You have your problems throughout the world, by all means, but I just found that it created more division in our nation, and it was unwarranted and unnecessary, people pushing their own agenda for what's happening in Palestine. Also, the university should have been reined in, that they should have been dealing with this, or the state police, to ensure safety. Even Jews couldn't walk on the streets. They were told to turn around and go away because they may be causing, division or hatred. All they were doing was trying to walk the streets from these other ones who were clearly the violence shown. And the Jewish people I've found have never shown violence in our streets. It's never come from them. They've been targeted, and that's a real shame. And people should not be treated like that in Australia. So, as I said, I feel that the Prime Minister never really dealt with it. They brought down some recommendations. Nothing's happened with it. It's all talk. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all, everything looks good here. Don't look over here. We're going to tell you how things are happening.
Ms. Hanson, also finally, have you had to witness the Jewish community needing to reinforce their own security in Australia? Over in the UK, we have an organisation called the Community Security Trust and others who have been protecting Jews going to synagogues. You'll be familiar with the Heaton Park attack that took place on Yom Kippur in Manchester. We've now got security outside Jewish schools. We've got security outside Jewish community centres. We've got glass being taken out of windows and replaced with plastic glazing. It's a sorry state of affairs when we consider the mantra of the Holocaust, which was never again.
You are so true in what you say. And, not to that extent. I know that the Jews are very concerned about their safety, and I've spoken to the Jewish community, and a lot of them are actually fleeing Australia and going back to Israel. They don't feel safe in their country, and they've made this place their home. They've been here for 2 to 3 decades, reared their families, and they don't feel safe in this country anymore. I think that this is going to drive a lot more of the Jewish community from Australia to go back to Israel, and I hope they don't. I hope that, the government and leaders of this nation stand up and offer them the protection. If it's the Jewish community this time, who's the next lot of people that will be targeted? Yes. That shouldn't be happening. That's my stance, is that no matter who it is, we have to ensure a safe country for all that are here, living here. And we need to really go after those ones who want to bring out their hatred and their violence to our streets and their terrorist attacks in Australia. We need to stop them.
Pauline Hanson, an Australian senator, thank you very much indeed for joining me today. The footage you're watching now is of the drone footage outside Bondi Beach as the emergency services and Australian authorities continue their investigations into a mass shooting that we now know has killed 10 people, one of those people, so 9 innocent victims caught up in this atrocity. One of the 2 gunmen has been killed, the police have confirmed. The other shooter is in a critical condition in hospital. We have at least 11 people injured, unconfirmed reports that one of them may be a 10-year-old child. We also think that 2 police officers have been injured and are being treated in hospital. This atrocity unfolded in Australia at around 6:45 p.m. Sydney time. We believe that more than 50 shots were fired into those on the beach, including those trying to enjoy a celebration of Hanukkah, the starting of that Jewish festivity. The lighting of candles taking place there appears to have been specifically attacked. We're just waiting in the press conference room you can see there, which is adorned with the Australian flag and the New South Wales flag. We're about to be addressed by the Premier of New South Wales, Chris Minns, and Mal Langdon, who is the relatively new chief of police there, who was only appointed in September, although a career police officer who, when he was appointed, described as having an extraordinary work ethic. Let's speak to Mark White now, our Home and Security editor, who has been across this story all morning. Mark, do we know anything new at this stage before we wait to hear from the police chief and indeed the Premier of New South Wales?
Well, nothing new in terms of the confirmation on the numbers, but what they did say, interestingly, is that they expect the casualty numbers to change, and that may well be why there's a delay. It's always in these dynamic situations, just after an event when things are happening. We're told, for instance, that New South Wales Police tactical units are currently raiding a property in the nearby area in the Sydney suburbs linked to one of the suspected attackers. And of course, we were mentioning just earlier about these suspicious items we think that may be improvised explosive devices, or at least it's suspected that they may be, that are being examined at the scene as well. Just as we wait for this news conference to take place, and I see a door opening there, but I don't think that's anything to do with the actual conference, just members of staff.
I think we're nearly there,
coming out there, so we might be. Yeah, it's that kind of activity that is clearly taking place just before they come. Right, I'll be quiet now and listen to this.
At 6:47 this evening, two individuals began firing on a crowded group of families on Bondi Beach at Archer Park. This cowardly act of terrifying violence is shocking and painful to see and represents some of our worst fears about terrorism in Sydney. I very sadly need to report that as of now, there are at least 12 individuals that have been killed. One of the offenders has also been killed and one is in custody. This attack was designed to target Sydney's Jewish community on the first day of Hanukkah. What should have been a night of peace and joy celebrated in that community with families and supporters has been shattered by this horrifying, evil attack. Commissioner Lanyon will speak about the investigation, the police response, as well as the designation of this attack as a terrorism event in Sydney. I can assure the community it will be met with a massive, comprehensive police and public order response. Our heart bleeds for Australia's Jewish community tonight. I can only imagine the pain that they're feeling right now to see their loved ones killed as they celebrate this ancient holiday. It's the responsibility of all Australians to wrap their arms around Australia's Jewish community and help them get through this incredibly difficult period. This is a massive, complex and just beginning investigation. It's just begun, and there are things that tonight we don't have the answers to. However, we do have answers to some crucial pieces of information for our wonderful city and our beautiful state. The first one is the outpouring of love and support from ordinary Australians for Australia's Jewish community is real. Secondly, today is another example of the enormous pressure and responsibility, the danger that New South Wales Police regularly face as part of their job. They do it without faltering. They didn't falter today. We need them. And thirdly, tonight saw extraordinary acts of personal courage and bravery from individuals in our community. And I think it's worth remembering that in all of this evil, in all of this sadness, there are still wonderful, brave Australians that are prepared to risk their lives to help a complete stranger. Mel?
Thank you, Premier. Good evening. Premier has outlined the brief circumstances this evening. I'll go through them again. They're more than happy to take some questions. About 6:47 p.m. this evening, police started to receive a number of reports of shots fired at Archer Park at Bondi. Archer Park is a grassed area just north of the Bondi Pavilion. Police responded promptly. Unfortunately, at least 12 people are deceased at this time. 29 people have been transported to various hospitals around the Sydney area, including 2 police officers. The condition of those officers and the other transported are serious, but there is a range of conditions. Our thoughts, prayers and love go to all the families and all of those that were involved tonight. We know that there were many people there to celebrate a happy occasion, the celebration of Hanukkah, and there was well over 1,000 people there when this took place. As a result of the circumstances of the incident tonight, at 9:36 p.m. this evening, I declared this to be a terrorist incident. I have also authorised special powers under Section 5 and Section 6 to ensure that if there is a third offender, and we are currently investigating that at the moment, we will make sure that we prevent any further activity. Section 6 allows us to investigate today's incident. There is a massive police response, and I think as journalists you have seen how quickly and promptly the police responded. I'm incredibly proud of the professionalism of our police and emergency service responders. They have done a fantastic job. Unfortunately, it's only several years ago that Bondi occurred, at Bondi Junction. We have learnt a lot from that, and tonight ambulance and police and other emergency responders acted promptly and professionally to do a great job there. We will have a significant investigation Our Counter-Terrorism Command will lead this investigation with investigators from the State Crime Command. No stone will be left unturned. This type of disgraceful activity, this wanton use of violence, the taking of innocent lives is unacceptable to New South Wales. It's not our way of life. I've been very clear since I've been the Commissioner that as a police force, we won't stand for this type of violence. I'm personally offended. You have seen that the police have already taken prompt action. The Premier has mentioned one of the offenders is deceased, the second one is in serious condition at hospital. We will focus to ensure that there is no further threat to the public. Could I ask, but this is a time of calm. This is a time where I want to make sure that there is no retribution. The police are investigating thoroughly. We have acted promptly. We have taken decisive action. Could I just ask for calm in the community? Allow the police to do our job. We will work closely with community and I'll continue to provide updates about the investigation as they go on. Thank you. I'll hand over to the Minister and then happy to take questions. Sorry.
Do we have an age range of the victims? Obviously it's early days of those deceased.
No, very early. Sorry, I don't have those details at the moment. As you can imagine, there has been a fair dislocation. The ambulance service responded brilliantly. They've had to convey people right around the city to numerous hospitals, so at this stage we don't have those details.
Commissioner, there's 12 people...
Sorry, can I just ask one at a time? Sorry.
Commissioner, do you have any intelligence about the two shooters?
We're working through that at the moment. Obviously part of the declaration is because I have information about the deceased shooter. It's not something that I'm prepared to give at the moment. It will be part of the investigation, but we will work tirelessly through our Counter-Terrorism Command to make sure we investigate all of the circumstances.
Commissioner, the 12 people that are deceased, do they include the gunman that is deceased, or is the gunman additional to that 12?
We've set up to 12 deceased at the moment. This is a really fluid situation. I would like to provide more certainty, but certainly the numbers that we are talking at the moment include the gunman.
Were any children among the deceased?
At this stage, I don't believe so. However, I do believe that a child was transported to hospital. Again, I don't want to give information that turns out to be incorrect. It is very early. We know that there has been a number of people turn up to hospital. We've had 29 others transported and we know people are still turning up there.
What gives you reason to think there might be a third gunman if a gun was married?
Unfortunately, in these sort of circumstances, we get information from a range of areas. We tend to be as safe as we possibly can so that we know that we have two definite offenders, but we want to make sure the community is safe. So we will run down this investigation. The reason that we have so many investigators out tonight is we can make sure that that happens. The fact that we've declared this as a terrorist incident, we've provided special powers, is to make sure that we prevent any further. I cannot confirm there is a third offender, but I want to make sure there's no stone left unturned.
Some news outlets are reporting a home in Bonnyrigg is being raided. Can you confirm that?
No, I'm well aware on social media that an identity of a person believed to be one of the gunmen has been circulated there. When I ask for calm, that is really important. This is not a time for retribution. This is a time to allow the police to do their duty. So police are responding to make sure that all of the community is safe. That is our role.
What can you tell us about public order rights, squad officers raiding homes? Is that happening right now?
What I'd say to you is that we have police right around the city at the moment to make sure that all of the community is safe. I don't want to go into too much specific activity. Our job is to respond to intelligence we get, respond to information, but make sure the community is safe. So unashamedly, we do have a lot of public order and rights squad and other police out on the streets at the moment to make sure there is calm. This disgraceful act will not go unpunished. Sorry, one question.
Were there any additional police resources around the Bondi area or Dover Heights in case there was any problems?
There certainly were police patrolling that area. We were well aware and we worked closely with the Jewish community in terms of Hanukkah. The Jewish community has its own security group that we work very closely with, so there were police present. The fact there was such prompt action taken demonstrates the police were present.
Is there still an active threat tonight? Right.
Sorry?
Is there still an active threat?
No, what I've said before is that we are aware definitely of two offenders at the moment. One of those is deceased, one is in hospital at the moment. We want to investigate thoroughly so that if there is a third offender or any other people are linked to this matter, we will investigate them and take action against them.
What intelligence do you have about this third person? Was he there with a gun? Is he outside of the area? What intelligence do you have? I think people need calm and worry that there's someone on the run still.
It's way too early to give that information. The community can be very reassured that the police responded quickly. The police have responded in numbers. We have a significant investigation underway at the moment. We will be following all people linked to those gunmen that we know, and we'll take action to keep the community safe. The community can rest assured that the police will take positive action to keep them safe.
What weapons were used and were they sourced illegally? And what can you tell us about the improvised explosive device found under the bridge?
It's way too early to give any description of the firearms other than to say that they were long arms. Where they came from, their background, how they came to be in possession of the offenders, it's too early to say. As part of the investigation and shortly after the shooting occurred, police located a vehicle in Campbell Parade at Bondi, which we believe has several improvised explosive devices. We have our rescue bomb disposal unit there at the moment working on that.
What is the latest on that?
It's still underway at the moment.
Are they any of these devices or?
It's too early to say that. As I said, we've got our rescue and bomb disposal unit there. They will take the appropriate action. They're experts in their field.
Were either of the two individuals, the deceased and the one in custody, known to authorities before this evening?
Only little on the offender that's deceased at the moment. I won't go into their background. That's obviously part of the investigation. Certainly form part of my consideration as whether to consider this to be a terrorist event.
Were any of the gunmen licensed to hold firearms, and do we know whether they were known to ASIO or New South Wales Police?
It's too early in that investigation.
Why did you declare it a terrorist attack?
There was a range of circumstances. Obviously, the fact that it's the first day of Hanukkah, the types of weapons, the offenders, some of the other items we found at the scene. As I said, we have found an improvised explosive device in a car, which is linked to the deceased offender. So there's a range of circumstances, and obviously the Jewish community has a right to feel safe. We will take serious action.
Commissioner, you knew about the gun that was deceased. How did you miss this attack? No.
I don't even think that's a reasonable question. What I said is that we are aware of the person. That does not mean there was any specific threat posed by that person. If the police had had intelligence that there was a risk to the community or to this event, we would have taken significant action. This is a tragic event. This is not the time to be pointing the finger. There will be a thorough investigation. My main focus is to make sure that the community feels safe and know that the police are there to support them and keep them safe.
Commissioner, how can two people with guns, improvised explosive devices in a car, organise something like this, potentially with a third person, and police do not know that it's coming?
Well, I think if you think about the size of the community here, our police do a fantastic job. Day in, day out, you see the work that we do to prevent crimes happening. We need intelligence to actually do that. As I said, the person that we know has very, very little knowledge to the police. So he's not someone that we would have automatically been looking at this time.
What can you tell us about the two injured police officers? Do you have their ranks? Has anyone been able to speak to them?
I wouldn't want to provide those details at the moment. We've obviously got next of kin coming down. Their loved ones will be with them. I want to make sure that they have some time in peace before we do. It's too early to provide that information.
Do you have a condition report at all?
Serious, verging on critical, and both are in surgery on top.
Commissioner, I understand a rabbi is among those who've been killed. Can you confirm that?
I can't confirm that, sorry.
This might be one for the Premier. Have you spoken to the Prime Minister, and is there any indication the national terror threat level will be raised?
I have spoken to the Prime Minister. I'll leave that up to him to inform the public of. But he offered all the support to New South Wales, and we both reflected on how shocking and terrifying this evil attack was.
Premier, what would you say to people who are scared right now?
Look, I understand that. This is a shocking event. It's not common in Australia, and it's all the more shocking because of that. What I can say is that there will be a comprehensive police response. Anything New South Wales Police needs in terms of resources, we will provide them. If there's changes that need to be made, we will do that immediately. I mean, we need to be in a situation where we're sending a clear and unambiguous message to the Jewish community, in fact every Australian that lives in this state, that these horrible acts of violence will never be tolerated, and anyone who perpetrates them we will throw the book at. Anyone who's thinking about it will be thoroughly investigated. This is a terrible night for Sydney, but I think it's important to say we can't let these evil people divide Australia up. We need to be in a situation where, as shocking as this is, there are still wonderful people in the Bondi community right throughout New South Wales. That's what these terrorists want. They want Australians divided and at each other's throats, and we can't let that happen. In fact, we won't let that happen.
Premier, at least 2 people, potentially 3, have worked together to organise a mass shooting event with shotguns at Bondi Beach. There's been IEDs in a car planted nearby. Further to what I asked the Commissioner, has there been a failure here? Has there been a failure in intelligence or policing?
Look, I mean, I think in the circumstances, it's reasonable that both the government and the police conduct an investigation. There will be, of course, a full inquiry. But when you're looking at several hours after this horrifying event, it's important that police focus on community safety right now and ensuring that the immediate vicinity is locked down, that the public, those who've been injured, are transported to hospital, and that there's not an immediate ongoing threat. There'll be plenty of times for a thorough investigation, and I can assure the public that that will take place. But we need to let the police do their job tonight.
Is there any intelligence shared from the Australian Federal Police?
I'm not going to get into that.
Is there any information to the motive of the offenders beyond it being a terrorist incident?
No, I mean, the fact that it was the first day of Hanukkah, that there were Jewish families celebrating as a community in Bondi, it's shocking and terrible and self-evidently a terrorist act.
The police operation is still continuing around Bondi, obviously. I mean, it is getting late for some people. Will schools be open in that area tomorrow? Practically, what should people be thinking about tomorrow? Like still staying home, staying out of that area? What is the advice for people?
My understanding is that private schools are closed tomorrow. The end of the year has already begun for many of the private schools, particularly in Sydney's eastern suburbs. But the government schools, the Secretary Murat Disda is looking at options for those communities. We'll communicate that as soon as possible. If you're a parent, particularly in that community, please look at your school social media account in the morning to work out whether schooling is going ahead or not. Police, it's obviously an ongoing situation. Police need to provide security, but if we can put in place a situation where there's not many sites, then that'd be a good thing tomorrow morning.
Mr. Minns, you've spoken about the bravery on the beach tonight. What are your thoughts on, there's a video of a member of the public wrestling one of the guns?
Unbelievable. I think it's the most unbelievable scene I've ever seen. A man walking up to a gunman who had fired on the community and single-handedly disarming him, putting his own life at risk to save the lives of countless other people. That man is a genuine hero, and I've got no doubt that there are many, many people alive tonight as a result of his bravery.
Please confirm, is the man whose body home is being raided, is he the person who's deceased?
I won't confirm that at the moment. All I'll say is that we're aware there is a social media post. I'd have to ask for people to remain calm at the moment.
And I understand that there's 3 people clearly visible in one of the videos. Is that third person the one that you are still trying to locate?
What I've said is we have confirmed there were definitely 2 offenders. We are investigating now to identify whether there was a third offender. Often in these sort of situations, a lot of things happen at once. You can imagine the chaos that was down there, the fear that were in members of the public there. We need to make sure that we get this information right. The fact that we've taken a positive step by declaring it as a terrorist event, providing special powers for investigations, shows how serious we are about making sure we investigate this thoroughly.
Is there potentially a third gunman on the right?
I think what I've said at the moment is we have confirmed 2, but I think the community should be very assured that the police are so thorough in New South Wales. We want to make sure that if there is any threat, we are aware of it and we take action to prevent.
We'll take a couple more. The police obviously have to get on.
No, sorry, I was asked that one earlier. It's too early at this stage to provide those details.
How many police resources outside of the Bondi area have been put into this?
Sorry?
How many police resources outside of the scene in Bondi have been put onto this investigation?
We'll put as many police officers as are required to investigate that matter. I've already indicated we have a significant presence from our counter-terrorism command, from our state crime command, and for all of the police area commands around Sydney. We'll put as many police as required. It is that serious, and the community, I want to feel safe.
James, last one, yes.
One more now. Minister?
Did you say something about police?
You're deploying extra resources from Victoria Police, is that correct? Are we stripped of our resources here because it's such a large-scale event?
No, I think what it is, we will look for whatever resources. So it may well be if there's a specialist resource that we require we don't have. We are an incredibly capable police force. We have the capability and the resources to investigate this sort of matter. It is not unusual at all, but for police forces to seek assistance and work with other police forces. As you can imagine, I've had offers from every police commissioner around Australia tonight to provide any assistance they can. That is what the policing family is like. That is our role. We're here to keep the community safe.
Minister, has there been anything that the police have asked the executive government for in terms of extra funding, extra powers, extra manpower on the ground? Is that from you?
As has been said by the Premier, we're just a few hours into this investigation, but let me be very clear. The government will provide the police with what they need to continue this investigation, for it to be thorough, and for the people of New South Wales to have the confidence in the New South Wales Police doing their job. Thank you all very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this is GB News live and continuing coverage of that horrific attack on Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, now confirmed to have been a terrorist attack. We've just been listening to a news conference conducted by the New South Wales Premier, Chris Minns, and the New South Wales Police Commissioner, Mal Lanyon, and some significant new information coming out of that news conference. Confirmation, of course, that the number of people who have died has now risen to 12. That number, they warn, could rise further. There are 29 other people who have been injured and taken to area hospitals. All of the injured have been described as being in a serious condition with various degrees of serious injury. They would not go into the exact details of the injuries or indeed the age range of those who have been taken to hospital, except to confirm some reports that a child may have been among those shot, and 2 police officers certainly among those shot, according to the police commissioner.